That's a good way to say it, people who identify as women,
Yeah.
and because that's kind of the whole concept is identity, and so women is an identity, and I totally respect everybody's, perspectives and how they interact with the world, but I identify as a woman, and I am accepting of others and happy to be kind to all, but also wanna be proud of my identity.
Yeah. Um, I wonder if I don't know if I've ever seen this before, if they have, any, like, whatever, women gender run groups, but then they have, like, a different type of membership that's, like, you're not, like, a member, but you're, like, a supporting member. I
Mm,
wonder if that would be, like, too tedious, but it would be interesting to have, like, men come in
mhm.
as, like, they know that their membership is specifically to, like
Support the group.
yes, thank you. I feel
Yeah,
like that's interesting.
I
Yeah.
wonder about the Avixa women's group because I went to the breakfast a couple years ago at Infocom, and it wasn't exclusive of anyone,
Right.
but it was labeled a women's breakfast, and
That's true.
the women were speakers. It was the CEO of Shure was there, and she's a woman.
Yeah, maybe it's also not that serious. Anyone
Yeah,
everyone can be a part of things. I always overcomplicate things sometimes.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and
but
even with my guy friends, like, sometimes, I manage a team of mostly salesmen. I'm the only woman on the team and I'm the leader, but we might join and say, "Hey ladies," like as a joke.
yep, and then Chrissy and I both say, "What's up, guys?" all the
Yeah,
time.
what's up? I never thought
Yeah.
about that until you said it. Like, "What's up, guys?"
I
Yeah.
and it's funny because of all the DEI training I've had. Okay, this is why you can't be in here. Just gonna walk over to the keyboard. Um, so the training that the DEI trainings that I've been through, um, it are awesome because they help me understand perspective. Like for instance, going back to my earlier statement is as much as I want to provide a platform for everyone else who feels, you know, that they are different from their assigned gender or sexuality or identity, I want to create a safe place for them. And also, someone like me who is a woman, I identify as a woman, I am biologically a woman, and to me, my identity is a part of that. It's
Mhm.
not only that. And I
Mhm.
want
Right.
to make sure people know that there are people in the DEI conversations who don't focus so heavily on what parts they have or how they identify.
Mhm.
They show up and do their job. So there's a big portion of the AV community who unfortunately and fortunately just don't care. So we need to
Right.
make sure we balance the conversation where, yes, we're providing you guys, there it is again. We're providing everyone a place to be and being sensitive to what that means to them, and also balancing the reality that there is a portion of business that just doesn't apply to
Mhm.
what you identify as,
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's about being a professional.
Right.
Mhm.
I also, I also have come to the terms where I don't mind if it takes a while for somebody to learn because it's like what you said, it's 30
Mhm.
years of, vocabulary that you're used to. I
Mhm.
don't mind from my experience, I don't mind if it takes them a while to learn and they mean well and then they keep like making mistake but they're learning and getting better versus
Mhm.
somebody who's actively like I just don't want to do that. It's just one of those things that's like is this really like it's just to be kind, like, it does not take that much effort, like, if that's
Yeah.
something that's really important to somebody, I'm more than happy to, like, go out of my way and change that vocabulary, and, like, even, what my grandparents and my parents have said where I'm like, "Oh, you can't say that anymore," and then
Yeah.
and then they learn, and
Yeah.
then they know, and then so it's one of those things that's like, as long as you're willing to learn and
Mhm.
try and get better, I
Mhm.
don't see the problem. It's when you're like when people are just very close-minded and I'm like, "What? is it really going to hurt you to say like everyone, you know,
Mhm.
like it's okay. It's not that hard. So that's kind of where I stand on that. I think
Mhm.
it's the heart behind it and yeah, being respectful of that for other
Yeah.
people.
It's almost like a conversation of being open-minded rather than
Mhm.
targeted topics. Like it's almost
Yeah.
like the larger umbrella is the open-mindedness, and then what are the kind of the categories, right? When you walk into a meeting, it's what are you gonna what's in front of you? Meaning, when I've walked into conference rooms, I've been in the industry long enough to where I was the only woman in those meetings for a majority of
Mhm.
the first part of my career. And then like middle of my career, it started to change. There'd be like one gal and it was like an intern, right?
Right.
Or somebody who doesn't really understand the landscape. And then eventually now it's much more common to have women in meetings, and it's not as much of a thing to point out, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I like that thought, Lex. That makes sense.
So if we're addressing and we're saying like ladies, I feel
Mhm.
like it would work if you know for a fact that everyone in that group women and identify as women. And then if you're not sure, that's when you go with the safe
Mhm.
vocabulary.
Hmm.
Ladies and gents, men and women, women and men. I do, you know what I do like? I don't know if we've talked about this in a different episode, but I love I saw it on TikTok, obviously, but I saw like a trend of like micro not aggression, but like
Mhm.
making sure like little micro feminist movements within
Mhm.
like the workday. And then so I like addressing like the woman first, or like in a meeting, if somebody needs to take
Yes.
notes, asking a guy to take the notes. Or even somebody who's like a little bit higher who would never typically take notes, and just like or addressing, or like when I wrote my wedding invites, it was like dear Mrs. and Mr. versus, you know, the other
Mhm.
way around, just doing fun things like that just because I don't know why. It's really satisfying to do.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the whole point of the conversation and why I actually wanted to talk about it in the context of the WAVIT group is it's more about challenging our perceptions and challenging, stigmas and things like that. And it's about respecting everyone. And so I think it's cool to point out the differences or the inequalities. Like you said, maybe there's just someone who never takes notes, regardless of their identity in a professional setting, like, it's good to point that out. But I do like, this group focuses on women, and I'd love to learn more about that and what the mission is and everything.
I don't know the mission off the top of my head. Maybe I should, but no. But I know that like Brandy Alvarez.
Good job. I do know,
Yes.
I think Alvarado?
Yes, you do. I know your last
You need to
name.
have like a digital Rolodex right in front of
Yeah.
you. Okay,
I
her.
think we all know who you're like, all you have to say is Brandy, though, and everyone knows
Yeah.
who she is.
True.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, Brandy I think was like one of the founding, if not the founding member of the group, and I think it's the basically the sentiment behind it is that there very often is a boys club, especially
Mhm.
in specifically the AVIT industry is what we're focusing on. And we wanted an opportunity for women to kind of have that sense of belonging and
Mhm.
that group that they can chat with and rely on and have that sense of community. Because I know for me, when I first entered the AV industry,
One of
um
those things.
like everyone else, there was just lots of guys. And I just
Yeah.
thought that's the way it is. But it wasn't until probably not my first, but my second InfoComm that I was introduced to Brandy and a couple of ladies. And I was invited to a dinner with like 14 ladies. And I had never been with that many women in the AV industry at once. Like
Yeah.
it was crazy and life changing. And I didn't realize how much I needed that sense of community and how different it was. I had some really wonderful male mentors and bosses and coworkers. So I never really thought anything of it. But
Mhm.
then it just was different to have a woman's perspective and be able to chat with them and you know on different things like for topics like if women are more likely to include exclamation marks or something in like their chat, because if you do, like, if I sent the same email my boss sent that's like, please do this, period, and then
Mhm.
he sends it and nobody thinks anything of it, but then I send it like verbatim, it could be seen as like rude. So it was like interesting, like starting my career and learning all these little nuances that, women more experienced could be like, oh yeah, this is just kind of how it is. We want to battle it, but for now, like, this is like the survival of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Ty,
Yeah,
what have
that's
you seen on a larger scale of, right? So maybe not so micro experiences like what you experience in conference rooms, but what have you seen like trending in your day to day in the larger scope of the industry around this topic?
Yeah.
good question. Let's see. Oh, I think there's definitely a lot of recognition, and what I've seen is a lot of, the men are actually really supportive. I can mention a few people that I know who, really support a lot of the women's groups and efforts, and not in a way that it's not about hardcore feminism. I think it's what you said, it's really about community. And I think it's something unique that our industry has to offer. Given the size, we really can, you know, bring this awareness. Everybody's on board to support it. When you asked me that, I was kind of thinking of like hiring within Symetrix and how are people hiring. So that's an interesting question. I feel like naturally, when I look around, I don't find as many women applying except for maybe like marketing roles. And in that case, they're usually turned off by how technical the industry is if they're not within the industry already, which actually makes me really sad, to be honest. So if you looked outside of our industry, which that's another thing that's really important to me too, because at Symetrix, part of my job is that I have to staff different organizations so that we can achieve our goals. So whether that's marketing, tech support, sales, and it's hard to find people who have exactly the right history and experience, and they know the industry and they know the products and they know the players and they know how to program and talk the talk. So in general, I like to see more people come into the industry and contribute. But I do wish I saw more women coming from outside the industry in. A lot of the women that I see usually come up through being sound engineers, but there's a lot of other roles, and you do need to learn a lot more, and it is different. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but that's what came to me.
It definitely gave us a lot of talking points for sure. It's like
I
you're a
know,
walking
I
quotation
remember,
device.
I'm like, focus, but there's so many things that came up.
Go ahead, Lex. You pick out yours, and then I'll go from there.
It was just like a small note. I love when job descriptions say, kind of at the bottom, like, you don't have to meet 100% of these qualifications to apply. Like, please apply anyway. Like, we would love to, decide for ourselves. And then there's like legitimate stats about how like women won't apply to something unless they're like 90% qualified versus men who are like, they go for it if they're like 60% qualified. So it's
I
just,
didn't know that.
yeah. So
Wow.
that helps so much, because even though I know those stats, just seeing that on there like takes a lot of pressure off to have, like, even when I look at job descriptions, I'm always like, oh, I don't meet all of them. I don't qualify, you know? So that was like one thought. And then the other thought was, yes, it does frustrate me that it's automatically marketing. It's always like, we've talked about this in a different episode. It's so frustrating. And like, I kind of fell into marketing. It just happened. And I kind of
I
hate it.
mean, same.
Just because people always assume I'm a girl, and I'm like, you're right. But like,
Yeah.
I want to be more than like the PR marketing girl.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, those were my quick little thoughts.
Mine stemmed too. I thought of those as well. And then there was one that you mentioned, women outside the industry. It's kind of hard to how can I say this? I guess market or
Mhm.
entice women to come into this industry. I mean, I came into it because I had a personal mission to become a late night TV producer. And
Oh, cool.
somehow I ended up in a super technical role, and anything somebody puts in front of me, and sometimes myself, like if I say I'm going to do something, it's, it's happening, and it's happening big. It's not like it's like, oh, that was a thought and hopefully I'll get there. No, no, no. Like if what happened
Mhm.
recently? Oh, I'm running for local office.
You have
Congratulations.
so many like
You're my
side
instant
quests.
hero.
Yep.
I love your side quests.
My name is on the ballot, and I'll know in April if I'm getting in.
That is badass.
It's been, so let me just go through this, because I think what we're really getting at is practicing mindsets and opening opportunities for other women. For me, I remember being 11 or 12, and I was on one of those elliptical bike things, and I was watching an election happen. And I was like, oh man, this is so fun. Like
Mhm.
the craziness of both sides going after each other, and where is the voice of the American community? I don't even know. And so I remember having that thought being really young, and that planted the seed of, you could totally do this. Like you could be into politics. So when I was in college, I did not have a lot of fostering efforts done with me as a young woman. It was just more, I was very independent for various reasons, and the few opportunities that I had of people fostering things, that did help. Like, oh, you have an interest in politics? Well, you should come visit this thing and see if you like it. Like that wasn't a thing. So I missed the opportunity to go to debate class in high school and college, but I did get involved maybe about 6 years ago now in the women's firearm industry. So
All
I
right.
Okay. Yeah.
became a range safety officer, and I'm getting my firearm instructor license this year. And I had that experience, Lex, that you had, but on the range, where I
Mm.
walked into the first meeting. Somebody was like, oh, you want to get into promoting women's personal safety? You should come to this thing. And
Mhm.
when I showed up, there was 30 women in the range holding firearms, working on their technique, and I just cried. I was like, "Ah, I have found my people." That fueled me wanting to continue to pursue my personal missions. And part of that, was my own drive, but it was also the fostering aspect of, hey, go to this thing. So then when I moved, I've lived to a bunch of different states, and when I moved to a couple of them, I was like, all right, I'm going to spend a year getting used to the state, and then I'm going to get into local politics. Well, that never happened. And finally, after however many years, it's happening. And I'm so excited. It's going to be if I get in, it'll be a 2-year run. And I'm asking the question. I'm asking the questions. How does a young person, or I should say a newbie too, right, get involved in something that they might have an inkling of passion for? So I'm asking the question for my local people, who's going to foster me here?
Mhm.
So driving that to the practicing mindset of the industry, are there women out there who are tinkering with a camera at their house, or maybe they took apart their dishwasher and put it back together, and they're wondering how they could use those skills and get paid for it? Where can we find that? I know Hope's involved with STEM, but I think it's part of that opening up the door and seeing who's going to come in is a big part of asking women outside of the industry to come into the industry.
Yeah,
So what do you
that's
think about that?
yeah, I think that's super interesting, and I was reflecting on myself. I always say I didn't choose the thug life chose me. I was
Yes.
Obviously, yeah.
I was very fortunate that my father's been in the industry for decades, and, I had the opportunity. He invited me to come work with him and come into the industry, and
It's awesome.
when I came in, it was the first time I felt like I could be myself. So I worked, in corporate America before, but it's always like, oh, I gotta, wear these certain types of clothes, but they don't really feel like me. I've always been part of like the, punk rock skater community, listening to underground bands and,
Right.
you know, things like that. And so I have this vision of, being like the punk rock executive, like have
Yeah.
tattoos and like I'm wearing a band t-shirt today, but I still want to be totally badass. Like I have my MBA and, I can hang with the best of them, but I feel like I can do that in this industry. And so
Yeah.
there's like a
Yeah.
culture aspect as well. And like we were talking about with the women's groups, I mean, there's plenty of other groups that do similar things. Like you were saying, they foster community. There's just so much special that we can offer from a culture standpoint in this industry. So that's something I'm going to have to think about. I liked your point, Lex, on how to put things on a job description and talking more about the culture and like what the industry has to offer you.
Yeah, I especially with like the newest workforce coming in, I feel like
Mm.
that's such a huge focus. Two things though. One, we never asked you to introduce yourself.
Oh.
So we need to do that. And then the other one, I wanted to get if you had any insights. I know that like there have been a lot of like layoffs lately. So I wonder if either of you, I feel like when you're laid off, you want advice or thoughts from
Mhm.
anyone. Have any like thoughts on showing yourself in the industry, connecting with people, you know, branding yourself maybe, like getting to the point where you can use these connections in a powerful way. So those are the two things that
Oh, that's a great
I wonder.
question. Yeah, we just got along so naturally. Didn't even need to ask my name. So I'm Hawley. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing at Symetrix, and I'm located just north of Seattle. So I'm over on the West Coast in the forest. That's where Symetrix is. We're
Nice.
about, 20 miles north of downtown.
Okay.
Yeah. Should I say anything else about myself? Like how long I've been? I don't know. What do you
Whatever
think?
you want to share.
Whatever
Casual.
your heart desires. Yeah.
You love
Awesome.
punk rock bands. I know that.
Yeah. We know you punk rock.
Yeah. And other genres, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I've been with Symetrix for 6 years now. And it's been such an awesome place for me to grow and develop. And I've been really grateful for the opportunity and to get to know the industry and getting opportunities like this. And I just want to really thank you guys for inviting me to this chat. I feel very honored.
Of course. You were
You're so welcome.
recommended. Who recommended her?
My
Gina.
husband.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so my husband's company work really closely with this organization and they've brought in lots of interns and it's been an awesome program. So I get to hear, the over the dinner
Uh-huh.
conversation from the other side and they really believe in this group and they've had a lot of success working with you guys.
Oh, good. What
Mhm.
is it? The intern? What is American music? Is that what it is?
Yeah, American Music and Sound.
Yes, part of a name.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I know that the interns have been having like wonderful experiences there. So that's exciting. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and he was sharing with me that they, get to do the internship, but then what's really cool about and am I saying it right? WAVIT is it?
Mhm.
Okay. WAVIT provides mentorship outside of the organization. So it's really cool that they, if they're and I don't know that this is true, but what I like about the mentor program is they have somebody outside of American Music and Sound to if they're struggling or
Mhm.
they asked me to do a project, I have no idea what they asked, like, they have someone outside that they can rely on. So I think
Yeah,
that's
I
really cool.
think it was Gina.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
fun.
Gina's
She's so
awesome.
wonderful. And it does help so much like when you're starting in an industry. I think that makes the difference between staying in it versus leaving. First chance you get is like how involved and integrated are you getting?
Yeah.
And being able to have especially somebody like Gina who's very welcoming.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yeah. Gina, Kelly, Corey, Brandy, Susan. If it wasn't for those ladies, I would be long gone.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Like
I
they are part. They all build the anchor that keeps me grounded. Because my
Mhm.
goodness.
Yeah.
I feel
Um,
that.
so to your second question, sorry, Chrissy, I don't mean to be hogging the mic, but I do have some thoughts. So you asked about layoffs recently and
Yeah.
how to approach that. And I think from my perspective, obviously it can be really disheartening. You're probably questioning your self-worth. And I think none of that's true. I mean, businesses have to make really tough decisions sometimes. And I know people most of the time they end up in a better place. It's just part of the journey. So I think just kind of trusting the process. But in the meantime, always adding value to yourself, always learning, always growing. And my personal philosophy and how I've been able to, continue to be promoted and be successful in my role is just be helpful, tackle the projects and the problems that nobody else wants to tackle. So when you're reaching out, I recently hired someone and they reached out to me on LinkedIn and they were like, "Hey, if you ever need help with these kinds of things, I'm here." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, well, let's talk some more." And I know that seems obvious, but um, whether you're laid off or you're still working a job and you're looking for more, or you're stuck, that that's my biggest advice to anyone is tackle the projects nobody else wants and be helpful.
Yeah. And then if you're laid off, connecting with people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, asking how you can help.
I go ahead, Christy.
I just love what you said. And it's funny because um, I was laid off once and
Oh.
I took 3 months to repair. And a lot of what you just said, it helped me figure out. That's what I also figured that out too during that period of time, because I was like, okay, I know it's not me. I know it's not my professionalism. There's who knows uncontrollable factors that cause that. So
Mhm.
what do I need to do to keep myself engaged and healthy and forward moving? And that was the first time that I had a true layoff. There was other like companies were sold, kind of moving on, but like a true layoff where your name was on the list, so to speak.
Mm.
Um, that was something that caught my mind, as I had to look at my soft and my hard skills, write them down, figure out which ones I like, and then do what you mentioned, is see where you can fit into companies. And that actually, honestly, is a very healthy way to look through job searching anyways. When I was first in the industry, it's like the thug life chose me. Like the industry just kind of like grabbed me and yanked me down the black hole that it is. And I'm like, swimming, trying to find my place. And that layoff helped me really get my footing, excuse me. I say
Thank you.
feet, but my feeding. Yeah. Today's been a fun word meshing day. So I love that. And that I agree with that. And another big element for me during that was I had to recognize that trauma did occur.
Mm.
Like, no matter what anybody wants to say, one day you were doing something and 12 hours later you had no access to your computer.
Yeah.
So that is trauma. And there's people that I know that was in that group that are still not whole from
Mhm.
that experience. So one thing I had to make a large effort to do was understand the psychological aspect that there was a loss, and that loss was more than just a job. It was identity, it was friendships, it was communication lines, it was a whole lot of other stuff. And if you want to dive deeper into that element, and it's like a whole nother podcast, but if you want to dive deeper in that concept, going back to Lex's point, is connecting with people. Hey, I'm feeling really low right now because all of a sudden I don't know what I'm supposed to do with 8 hours of my day, right? Or
Yeah.
that, just being able to share that. And it's more than just connecting for the sense of, hey, do you know a job over there in your pond? You got any openings? It's more of a like, oh my gosh, who do I connect with? Right? Who can I bring into my circle of support because I need it,
I it in my therapy sessions lately, we've been talking about like diversifying your identity, and
Oh, I
I
love that.
I don't know why, but I attach so much to my job. And within the last like 2 or 3 years, that's kind of been almost to my detriment. And that's why I want to say like that's why the community and the connections are so important, because that allows you to take yourself out from just your job, but like how else am I contributing to the industry? Chrissy and I's relationship is very different than mine and my boss's, and there's an entirely different identity, and it doesn't focus on me and my job and what's happening there. So I think that's also one of the things that would help also when you get laid off, not having that one place that just tore your heart apart, but like knowing like you still have roots set in other places. So it's not like as big of an identity crisis. It's also harder said than done, because in America, like America's very focused on your job. Like, hey, nice to meet you. What do you do? Where do you work? In like other countries, that's like not a thing to ask. But yeah, that's something I've been working on is finding identity in different things. So like being involved in this community, or just in the higher ed community in general, in the digital signage community, like just finding those pieces of interest, diversifying throughout the industry, so that this job isn't just my only.
Oh,
Yay.
you guys said some beautiful things. I love not making just the job your sole identity and relying on community, especially, that's a problem across society. And with so many people working remote now, even in the industry, it's probably really easy in a layoff situation to feel alone and left out in the dark. But I also really appreciate what Chrissy said of acknowledging your feelings and your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wallowing in it and letting it prevent you from continuing to, you know, do and be and connect and move forward, that's not okay. But especially as women or in our society, a lot of times, we're not it it's not cool to have feelings, especially as a woman, like, "Oh, I'm being emotional."
Yeah.
Blow past it, but no. No, this is how I feel. I feel mad. I feel
Right.
upset. I'm pissed. I'm hurt. Okay, now that I've acknowledged that, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
How do you think business itself in its own entity plays a role in emotional availability? For instance, going back to my comment about how layoffs are sometimes just par for the course, right? They just happen, it's business. But business itself cannot be conducted without the consumption of emotion. So it's interesting to me
Mhm.
how that can play a role.
It's so cold and cruel.
It is.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, especially when, you go there every day, you talk to these people every day, like you're human, you get attached, you get, even if you mean your best and don't want to, it happens.
Mhm.
I feel for everyone there. And then also there's like the trickling trauma from it as well. Like you're seeing somebody who like you think you're like, that's such an impressive person. Like they're really known for being like a rock star in their job, or, in the industry. And then they get laid off and you're like, whoa, and then
They
so
can be laid off, yeah.
yeah,
Right. Right.
Well, something that really changed my perspective when I got my MBA, because like, most ladies, I came up through marketing, and as I was getting promoted, it was more important for me to understand how businesses operate. And truly, at the end of the day, businesses exist to make a profit.
Yeah.
Now, there's the extreme of being like greedy corporate mongrels. But even if you want to be a charitable business, you can't be charitable if you don't have a profit. You can't create jobs.
Mhm.
You can't give benefits if there's no profit. And so that's the cold, hard truth side of it.
Mhm.
But the fact is, we're all humans working, and it is hard. And I think Lex keeps emphasizing the importance of community, and I think that's where you have to look for that. We have to acknowledge, at the end of the day, it's about profit, and things change and decisions are made based on that.
Right.
And sometimes they don't feel good or whatever. And I have that, one of the things that we have in Symetrix, that my parents started, we call it the care team. Now, obviously, that's not as relevant if you're in a layoff situation, but just, part of their mission is to acknowledge the human side of being at work. And their whole mission is to provide a working environment where people can thrive. And no matter what, if you leave the business for whatever reason, you're better off as a person because you are nurtured, you are developed, and we have a team specifically in place that takes care of you. So if something happens, someone's going to, if you have surgery, someone's going to send you dinner. If your car breaks down, we'll get you an Uber, that type of thing.
Do you have any advice on kind of standing out and doing things above and beyond besides like just connecting? Like, are there specific things? Like, did you feel like your MBA really, do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Is there anything like actually like, okay, do this and this will for sure put you ahead? Or is it, I'm just trying to get as much like actionable advice for people as
I love this question. Kind of what I guess my perspective earlier on the layoff question. This is something I'm actually really passionate about. So when I started my career, I thought I was going to be a graphic designer. And I went out in the world and I realized I didn't necessarily love, spending as much time in the details as a really great graphic artist would. And the market is flooded. There's a lot of designers out there. So I just kind of had to scrap my way through finding work. And, long story short, I did end up in a role where I was doing, web design in a corporate environment. So there was a team of us there. And over the years, that's kind of what I like. I wanted more. I didn't know what, but I didn't want to just stay in this role forever. And so that's what I did. I would just always, volunteer, like, oh, there's this horrible process or nobody wants to deal with that. I'm like, give me your worst problem. Give me the thing nobody else wants to touch and let me nail it for you.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, businesses need people to solve problems.
Right.
So there's nothing worse than being like, well, I don't want to give that person that project because I don't think they want to do that. Like, that's that's something I deal with all the time. And like my best employees are like always ready to tackle the project. It's not like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, those are the people that get ahead. Keep showing up, volunteering, tackle the worst problems. Most of my roles weren't roles that existed previously. So I was able to create new jobs for myself just
Nice.
based on like, what are the problems? Like, go to your boss and say, what's your biggest problem right now? How can I help? What's something nobody else wants to deal with? And be reliable.
Right.
I'm pretty positive that's how also Chrissy and myself are in our positions, right? We like it speaks to something where you're finding your own like problems to solve, and you're kind of getting your own sense of job security by
Right.
creating something that you made up. Therefore, you're probably the best person at doing it. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a balance because going back to the identity thing, being displaced from an identity and then finding a new one. I mean, I kind of got displaced from my identity a couple times in the last 3 years because I transitioned out of travel. And not traveling in this industry is almost like shooting off your own leg because there's a lot of networking that gets done in trade shows and so on and so forth. So it's a balance of that energy displacement I just got my ADD just took me on a whole nother roller coaster of thought and I lost what I was originally saying.
Let's embrace it.
Well, I will. I was excited to talk about how identity in a position can go in different locations when we press into who we are as a person. And so you're mentioning that you like to find roles that are the the things that people don't want to touch. And for me, I love puzzles. I love challenges. I love, hey, we have to do this thing, and we are currently here, or maybe we don't even know where we're at, but this is the pain point. So if I love it when I'm in a meeting and somebody says to me, my pain point is this. Okay, that's all I need. And then I'm off into the races figuring out the thing. And I love it because the current role that I'm in right now, like the community of people that I work with, they're wanting somebody to fix these problems, but they just don't even know how to do it. And so if somebody shows up like me and it's like, well, let me figure it out, or take a crack at it at least.
Well, and I think that's on topic, because the other thing I'm really passionate about is playing to your strengths.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean just solving any problem, but if you're like, even if you're just extremely, technical, you're an AV programmer, that's okay.
Mhm.
But untangle some spaghetti closet that no one wants to deal with, or something like that.
You just made me think of having necklaces tangled up in the jewelry boxes, and you don't even touch that pile for a couple months because you're so mad at it.
I can't deal with this today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, for me, personally, I like to find things that bother me personally, and then I'll figure out how, what's going on inside to fix it. And I get to do that in my job. Like that is, that's awesome. And I don't know how much I'm leery with the job security comment that you made, Lex, just because I'm just so used to industry changing within 1.5 to 3 years period of time. The industry can have a whole new face, and job security can change like that. I think for me, just having had gone through the experience that I've gone through, one key element, full circle, is to always have a backup plan. Whether that's, and I don't mean just a backup plan like, hey, Bob, can you hire me if something goes down? Not that kind of backup plan. I'm talking about your mental network, everything just kind of in the back of your head. This could happen, right? So if I was to get laid off again, I already have kind of a plan in place because it already happened to me once. And it's like, okay, I got to make sure I have finances in order. I need to make sure that I have my network still knows who I am, and what I'm good at, and creating relationships. I need to make sure I'm technically still sharp as I was when I first started my role. Like all of those things are choices that people can make behind the scenes, behind the camera, so to speak, of what they're doing day to day. And that might involve changing industries. It might involve changing roles. I'd love to pick your brains on what you both think about the idea of changing roles and starting at the bottom, right? How can we change roles without having to start at the bottom? Is that even possible?
Go Ty.
I'm like, I feel like I've been talking too much.
No, this is your
not
episode.
at all.
You're supposed to talk.
Yeah, well, and I think, Chrissy, nothing's guaranteed in life, right? We have to remember that. And so it's always about whether you're laid off or not, you should have the same attitude. You should always be, planning for your safety as best as you can, building your personal equity, I'll call it.
I love that.
Which is your skill set and your attitude and all those things. And then what was the question, Lex? I wanted
Did I have a question?
No, the
Oh
question.
no, Chrissy did.
Yeah, the question was to get both of your opinions on if all the cards fell, right, and you had to like look at what you were going to do next, start changing positions might include starting at the bottom, but would you have to, if you were to transition roles into the company, or even just go from marketing to something else, or from something else to marketing, do you have to start at the bottom in order to, be successful? Or is there opportunities where you could kind of get in halfway and then start going up?
Oh, I love this question. Oh, go ahead.
I have a thought. I will say, obviously, I have not like officially it's not gone all the way through to the end and been successful, but I have been thinking about that. I started as basically, I got hired basically for PR. And then that kind of morphed into me seeing like trash design all over campus and realizing like, oh, I can help with that. So I learned some skills there. I learned web building skills. Like I
You saw a problem.
I identified some problems and I started creating it. And then my job morphed into that. And then I created our digital signage program because I saw again that the digital signage was really bad. So then my job morphed into this. And throughout these couple years, I realized, okay, I'm in higher ed, which is very hard to transfer out of higher ed unless you're doing like sales or you're an engineer already. So I was thinking about like, okay, well, what do I want next? And what does that look like? What does my job and my skills look like outside of higher ed? And at first I was like, okay, maybe product management, because like I manage all the digital signage. And I looked into that and I was like talking to other people, other product managers in the industry, because again, I wanted to go into outside of higher ed into a product management role. I didn't want to have to like start all over. So I was like, okay, what experience specifically do I need that would be directly transferable? And I did that for a little bit. And then I started working on those skills and I realized, I don't know if I really love that. I like it a lot. But then that kind of also morphed into product marketing management. And then that's when I was like, oh, this is like the perfect marriage of all my skills that I really like. And I started talking to people there. And then I'm specifically working on projects at work that help me to hopefully not have to start at the bottom wherever I go, so that I can directly apply already to product management roles, product marketing management roles, without having to start from the bottom. I will say it is hard figuring out how to tell my story because it does not look traditional. It does not, it looks like I haven't started, it looks like I'm starting with not as much experience, or I've literally had it in an interview where somebody's like, explain why, like, I don't understand why you want this job, or like, what's the fit here? Like, tell me your story. So I think that is how I'm trying to not start from the bottom when I do eventually leave higher ed, is trying to, number one, network, number two, get those skills beforehand with whatever work I can do where I'm at. But I will say the problem is it is not directly the same. And since it's like more nonprofit, I can't speak to, it's harder for me to speak to someone like the more solid, like numbers, sales, retention, like things like that higher ed just does not care about. Like it's like, and that's hard to find the stats and like the work to do when your boss is like, I don't care about that. I don't want you to, I'm not going to pay you to get that information that's not relevant to us. So that's kind of my strategy of trying not to start from the bottom where I go next. But again,
I love your story. That's fantastic. I think that attitude is just spot on. And I have a couple thoughts. So I think your approach is such a great approach, even to just get a promotion within the same role or switching roles. Like a lot of people are so entitled, like I should be promoted and I'm not going to start doing the thing until I'm given the title and the money. Well, that's not how it works. The whole point is that you're growing, you're stretching, you're contributing more, you're learning new skills. And so there is a period where you can't just like boom be this other thing. There's like an overlap of stretching, taking trainings, taking on projects where you can apply what you've learned in trainings. So that's all really good. The other thing is knowing your strengths. So I talked about that a little while ago. I'm a huge fan. I use the highfive.com. It's like the free version of Strengths Finder.
Okay.
And it tells you what your top 5 strengths are. And it's so powerful to know who you are and what you're good at. And it's really hard to know that when you're first starting out in your career. As I mentioned earlier, I thought I was going to be a graphic designer, fumbled my way into a web design role. And then one day I was like, how did I get this far? Like, who am I? What am I good at? What do I want to do? And I had a wonderful boss who encouraged me to do the Strength Finder. And we talked a lot about what I'm naturally good at. And I said, you know what? I don't want to keep putting learn JavaScript in my goals. I want a leadership opportunity.
Yeah.
And then a
Yeah.
project came up and she said, cool, here's your chance. And that's where I learned a lot about myself and what I really care about and what motivates me. And that's when I had the realization that if you continue to think like, oh, I want to be a doctor, lawyer, whatever, that's really challenging. Like you were mentioning, applying for a job where it's like, oh, I don't have those bullets. So if you're looking for a new role or something like that, and they're like, I don't see the fit, here's my top 5 strengths. Here's what I'm passionate about. Here's what motivates me. And those are the reasons why, sure, I can learn technical skills. Anybody can learn technical skills. But like as a human, here's what I bring to the table and why that's interesting. The other thing, back to the original question of starting at the bottom,
Mm.
there's so much value in working a job to then improving the job or managing the job.
Oh, I love
So,
that. Mhm.
yeah, I studied actually also have my yellow belt in Lean Six Sigma, which is process improvement, and there's a term, it's called the Gemba walk, and it's like, if you're a manager, but you've never done your employee's job, how can you really help them or improve it? And so in a manufacturing facility, they talk about, the people who run the factory or whatever working on the line for a couple days. So when I started my job at Symetrix, I did start at the bottom, and that was intentional because I needed to learn the business. So I started doing order entry and sales administration, and by doing that, I was able to really understand who our customers are, how they order, what's important to them. And I really learned the industry that way. And then I was able to improve the job and, make it processized so that somebody else could do the job. And then along the way, identify like, hey, we're missing some leadership over here, or so I'll step up to do that. I've done this job long enough and solidified it enough. I can train someone else to do it. So
And also, just from an employee perspective, I do naturally, I think any employee naturally respects somebody a little bit more if they know that they've started and like been where they're at,
right.
it just, and then also you could just tell when a leader has like been there and understands the struggles. And I also think it's super awesome, like, kind of what you were saying, being on like such a powerful move if you've been on the user end and then you go in and work for somebody and been like, listen, I've been a user for years. I know exactly what like we're thinking, and I could problem solve from like that perspective, which is a rare but neat
That's a good point. That gives you credibility and trust.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Chrissy?
Yeah, sorry about that interruption. I don't know if you guys heard it, but I don't know why my computer was making noise. So I have an interesting. I'm hearing something in the background with these concepts, and I'm going to pose another question for us, and that is, how much do you feel that believing in ourselves? So, like, if we're talking to that group of ladies who, are in transition or need support, how much does believing in ourselves individually apply to our success, right? So my question is, how do you believe in yourselves individually in order to do what you're saying that you're doing on a regular basis? What does that journey look like for you?
For me, it's funny you mentioned that because I was talking about top 5 strengths.
Yeah.
One of my top 5 is that I'm a self-believer.
I
And I
love
think
it. I didn't even know that was a thing.
right, me either. And so it's a good point to recognize that maybe not everyone is naturally a self-believer. And I have seen that, being a manager. Um, for me, being a self-believer, it's just like sheer determination and grit. Like I will figure that out. Like
Yeah.
you were saying, I will get there. I will run for city council, whatever it takes.
Exactly.
And I was reading in a leadership book recently, one of the biggest barriers that people have to achieving their goals is their own perception that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting that you say that. I had a personal thing come up recently, and it made me just go into like a fun ADD imaginative reality for like a half hour. And
Sweet.
the question I asked myself was, what if I could redo the last 35 years, and every moment where I second guessed myself and declined it, I actually believed in myself and did it?
Whoa.
Like, what type of woman would I be today? And the first thing that comes to my mind is sadness, because here I am out there striving and grasping and clawing for somebody to believe in me. And here I'm not even believing in myself on a day-to-day basis. So I was like, what if I had even just take the last 5 years? What what narrative, what behaviors, what habits was I doing in those 5 years to constantly, what's that thing when you are trying to blow air in a fire to make it bigger? What is that thing called?
Fire blower.
No, I know
Fire-
exactly what you're talking about, and
Like-
now I feel so silly because I know.
I don't know what it's called. A poofer. Anyways, what am I doing that's taking that, like, it's like walking up to somebody who's doing that to a fire and ripping it out of their hands and like saying, no, you have to keep your fire dim. Sorry.
Yeah.
And
I've
yeah.
experienced, so even though I have like self-belief and
Right.
like I said, it comes from just like sheer determination, I've still struggled throughout my career with like imposter syndrome or low confidence.
Hmm.
Like I have no idea what I'm doing, you know? And so it's like where
Yes. Like
some of
nobody
it is,
teaches it to you.
yeah, like what can we look to as sources of confidence? Like
Right.
building confidence. You know, it's easy to give someone else a pep talk, but you know, how do we do it for ourselves? For me, it was realizing I had a false narrative in
Ooh,
my mind
right.
and challenging that, which took a long time. It wasn't like all of a sudden I'm like, nah, I don't feel that way anymore. It's like constantly like, wait, that seems like a thought. Like, is that true or not? Like, you know, to say you don't know what you're doing, that's not true.
Right.
You do know what you're doing. You're a smart person and you showed up to work today.
Yep.
End of story.
End of story. No other extra commentary needed. And I think too, because for me, my mindset was so focused on what I can't do, that learning and reversing the habit to tell myself, wow, you're doing such a great job, like that was slow going, right?
Mhm.
Like take city council for example. I'm going to see how this goes, and I'm using it as a personal opportunity to learn how I do in the face of adversity and hate. And see what comes out of me. And
That's
what I
amazing.
hope to see is that the belief in myself grows to be to the point where it's unbreakable. See, there's me mashing words again together.
Unbreakable could be a word though.
Unbreakable.
It sounds like it would be a word.
Because I have yearned for that my entire life. I just want a connection with someone that is so unbreakable, nothing could stand in our way. And I'm like, how can you even have that if you don't have that within yourself, you know?
This is
So
actually, you're leading to a topic I hoped we would land on today. And it's been coming up for me a lot lately. Like we are saying, changing that narrative isn't easy. You're
yeah,
talking about putting yourself in a position, facing adversity and hate. The first day you get up there and deal with that, you're not going to be totally, and here's the buzzword, resilient. So
Right.
that's something I wanted to talk about today is resilience.
Hmm.
And, you know, I think that comes with confidence. I had an amazing lunch interaction at Infocom last year, and it really there's someone in the industry. I won't mention their name in case they wouldn't appreciate that. But there's someone who works with Symetrix, and they're a very special business partner of ours. And I bumped into them at lunch, and he pointed out to me a false narrative that I was carrying around, and it totally
Ooh.
changed my perspective. So I manage a sales team.
Mhm.
I wasn't formally trained to manage a sales team. I manage individuals who have, twice my life experience in the industry working in a sales organization. And I was talking to this fellow and I said, but what do I know? Kind of like the whole I didn't choose the thug life. Like I'm just thrown into this situation. Like even that's kind of a false narrative. Like, but I was like, but what do I know? And he's like, Ty, that's a racket. You
Mhm.
do know. Don't say what do I know? You do know. And like that totally changed my perspective. So that helped me build confidence, but also there's a sense of building resilience that comes with that. So, when I have to have a difficult conversation or something, spent years just being like so nervous and like feeling like imposter syndrome. I don't know what I'm doing or what do I know? But then it's like, no, that's false. You need to have confidence and you have to build up a resilience to these situations. I could be super freaked out right now, or I could just say, this is my job. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I think there's also something to be said that the more experience you get, the more you know that you don't know. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm like, it's also kind of awareness that's like, okay, like I'm super aware of what I don't know, but that doesn't mean like it, I still have all the information I came into this with.
Yeah.
What you said, you were talking about resilience and grit. And I had to Google it because I was like, no, actually, what is the difference? And it says, according to Google AI, resilience is the ability to recover from setbacks, while grit is the drive to keep working towards a goal despite setbacks.
I love that.
Love that.
It's still
And I
kind of
love that
weird.
they go hand in hand. I said it, but I didn't think of it the way that you just explained it. And now that's forever going to be part of me. Thank you.
Google helped out. Me and
No, Lex helped out.
Google. Thank you.
You knew to Google it, Lex. Come on.
Yeah,
This is
I
you, girl.
knew that. No, I think that that's interesting because I think there's having resilience and then there's like, recovering from it, but then taking it that one step farther and in having grit and saying, okay, I'm going to keep working towards my goals. And sometimes goals change and pivot and, you different opportunities and you just seize those and you never know where you'll lead to next. And I think that there's also, power in not having an exact plan as well. And just, going where it leads you. And maybe you're in charge of a sales team one day and the next day, you're something else.
I think this ties into the reactionary versus response skill set too, because once it's a very humbling lesson to learn that I'm the one standing in my own way. Because like you can blame everybody else and blame situations and blame lifestyles or childhoods or whatever, and then you look in the mirror and you realize, well, you're standing in your own way, and it might not be that you put yourself there. Maybe those situations put yourself in front of you, but it's your responsibility to remove the barrier, which is yourself. And when I learned that, I realized that the reaction and response lesson, skill set, whatever you want to call it, played a key role in managing myself, saying, hey, the reason why you're reacting this way today, for this thing, like let's say, it could be work related, it could be personal related. I'll use a personal example. My cat knocked over something and it fell on the ground and broke, right? On a non-stressed out, responsive way, I would be like, oh, swear word. Cool. And I go over and I get a broom and I clean it up. I put the cat, I gently pick up the cat and put her on the other side of the couch or whatever and just deal with the mess, clean it up. I can't do anything. It's a cat. It's going to happen again, right? But on a stressed out day, I might be like, oh, swear word. And I'm like, la, 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 la. And then like all the animals are scared because there's all of a sudden their mom is screaming, and I don't want to respond that way, right? So when I learn that the management of that stressor is solely my responsibility. And one of the biggest adversities to me learning how to manage that stressor is myself. I all of a sudden have all the patience in the world because I'm the one that's stopping me. I'm the one holding up my own stop sign.
Right.
So I really have to stop, breathe, take a deep breath, and really sit with myself and be like, why are you responding this way? And why are you and then I have to sit there and wait for the swear word answer. So it can
That
get
is so mature of you. I love it.
Thank you. And well, I mean, of all of us, we're all talking about this exact behavior that we're working with ourselves on, and it's incredible. It's really a beautiful thing, beautiful place to be.
It is. And what you're saying reminded me, in our house we have a saying where it's kind of like, reasons don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Reasons create the rackets and the narratives. So
Love
once
that.
you can just kind of stop and say, well, it maybe their contributions or helps you feel better to understand, but it doesn't matter. What matters is what you do next.
Yep.
I need to send you. I'll link it. We'll link in the show notes too. But then there's like a TikTok that went viral, and then she's like she's like on a talk show. She gets really mad. She's like, "What?" Blah blah blah. And then she immediately stops herself. She's like, "Well, I'm an adult. It's not that serious." And she like instantly just like gentle parents herself, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna just like mid yell, mid sentence." It's so good.
That's hilarious.
I try to do that now too. I'm like, oh, it's not that serious. I'm just sending an email. It's really not.
Yeah, totally. I mean, sometimes swearing helps, but I've had the same where it's like an email. I used to just get really worked up, or you take it home, taking work home, you know, when you're getting so attached back to our first, like, my identity is caught up in it. It that's where the word resilience really has come into play in my career, is being like, it's just an email. It's just an 8-hour day. Like, obviously I care more than that, but the reality is I could work here, I could work there. It's 8 hours. I get to go home,
Yep.
keep
And-
business in business, handle my emotions. Yeah.
And business is cold, hard, and not kind, and
Not personal.
that's the balance. That's the balance, I think, too, what that comes with this. And there's a mentality that I see just naturally with some people that I work with, and just industry people in general, and where I've even come from, is that the technical problem has to be solved, and my mind can't settle if the technical problem isn't solved. And I've had to teach myself that needs to turn off at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, because I can
It'll
pick it up.
kill you if you let
the
it.
Lego set is still going to be there at 9 a.m. tomorrow. It's still going to be there. And me burning the midnight oil just to hit roadblocks that I can't change, that's where I bring in
The only person it hurts is you. Like
Right.
like you said earlier, I'm the only reason I'm holding myself back in situations, but also, when we're getting worked up or not controlling our emotions and things like that, letting the problems affect us on such a deep level, the only person it hurts is ourselves.
I would love to have a conversation with you in a year again on the podcast. And
you say that in like every other episode. I'm like, I hope you're keeping track of
and like to see how we've grown from this conversation.
Oh, that's wonderful.
If
last year I certainly would have had much different responses even, so
it'll be fun. I mean, sometimes it takes me longer than a year to really grasp a lesson that I'm learning, but
so true.
It'll be fun to see. I mean, if we're talking at the level we're talking now, I can only imagine the strength that we will individually learn in our day-to-days, that we can come back together and chat and commiserate about.
I know, Miss City Council.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
And back to, like, bringing people outside the industry or vice versa, I wonder what skill set you can gain from city council that could benefit the industry and what you do in your day-to-day.
That is going to be a fun question. I'll put that on my board.
This was such a good conversation. This is exactly why we started this podcast, because we wanted, those natural conversations that happen over coffee or dinner with, people in the industry. being able to be a part of that no matter where you are in the world, in the US, and being able to be a part of these conversations and think through these things, hear other perspectives. But any listeners, I'm sure Ty would be more than willing to chat with you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would be delighted.
Okay. So reach out to her. We always have our guests information in the show notes. And also, if you have any questions or topics that you guys want to talk about, or any perspectives on what we chatted about today, we would love to hear it. We are here to learn and grow, and that's the whole point of this, to learn and grow and develop a community. So we would love to chat with you. Thank you so much.